Lighting is more than just a tool for visibility, it's a language. The way we light a subject can tell a story, evoke emotions, and even shape how we perceive a person. For example, the lighting that you're seeing right now is dramatic with deep shadows that probably make me look evil and menacing. Now, let me show you how we could change the language altogether by changing just how I'm lit. Okay, now with this setup, I probably look friendlier, dare I say more beautiful? All right, that's probably a little bit of a stretch, okay? But I'm sure that you could see what I'm talking about. These are two extremes, but in between, there are several different ways that a person can be lit for a portrait or in a video to make them appear friendly, confident, beautiful, or make them look sinister and evil, all without a single word being spoken. This takes me to the debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, where I couldn't help but notice how different the lighting looked between the four participants of this debate. Now, before we get into this topic, I want to preface this video by saying that I'm not a member of either political party, so this isn't meant to endorse or diss either candidate. This video is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only, and it's meant to highlight how lighting can subliminally speak to us as viewers. I believe that if we're more aware of the language of light, we'll be able to spot how lighting can help to foster narratives for or against people of all walks of life. Let's start off first by looking at the pullback shot at the very beginning of the segment. You can see there are several point light sources going in different directions that are going to light everyone in that space. There's a truss above the area as well, which may have some additional lighting that we can't really see, but my assumption is that something is probably up there. What I want you to take notice of is the lighting on the moderator's desk. You can see there's a curved LED type of lighting, which serves a few purposes. They not only have light on their desk so that they can see what's on it, but it also provides some nice soft light coming from below. They're essentially creating a type of beauty lighting where you have the main light from above and then a fill light or a reflector that's coming from below to fill in the shadows. It's a setup that I use all the time in my portrait work because it flatters the look of skin. And as you can see, each of the moderators are lit absolutely beautifully. At just about any angle, they are professionally lit and they just look awesome. I'm going to steal that light setup for myself right now. I should also introduce you to something called catchlights. I talk about this all the time in my portrait tutorials, which I invite you to check out after this video is done. But catchlights are the reflections of different light sources that are showing up in a person's eyes. Different shaped lights create different shapes of catchlights. And as a general rule, the more catchlights, the more interesting you can make someone look. The LED on the desk is not only filling shadows on their faces and on my face, but it's adding a gorgeous catchlight in the eyes that make them look alive and vibrant. The presence of these catchlights is what makes people look alive, and once you minimize or you lose those catchlights in an image, you quickly start to make the subject look less alive. This isn't just for photography and for video, but even when it comes to drawings. Check out this drawing that I found on howtodrawcomics.net, for example. See how the drawing goes from looking like a robot to looking more human? I would argue that the biggest difference between the left and the right drawing is the detail in the eyes. All right, so hopefully you agree that the lighting on the moderators looks great, and I suppose it's kind of to be expected. They are the fixtures on the news station, so you want to make sure that they look great. Now let's shift to the lighting used for Vice President Harris. What I noticed right away was that the lighting made her look bright and alive. She looked great at every angle as she would turn her head, which can be a little bit of a challenge for people who are rigging up the light. She didn't have any sort of fill light that I could see that was coming from the podium, but whatever light source they are using is showing up in her eyes and is doing all sorts of great things for how she looks all throughout the debate. At this point, 3 of the 4 participants of this program are lit well so far, with noticeable and prominent catchlights being easy to spot throughout the entirety of the interview. Now let's look at the lighting on former President Donald Trump. It seems that at most angles, he had little to no catchlights in his eyes. The overall exposure on his face looked to be darker than Harris too, which was a little bit weird. which combined with the lack of catch lights and of course his facial expressions, it just made him look terrible in my opinion. The lighting used for Trump in this debate didn't do him any favors, but maybe this was a one-off situation. Well, let's take a look at the CNN interview between Dana Bash and JD Vance. Again, Dana is well lit as the host with catch lights that are showing prominently throughout the entirety of the interview. You could see a couple of different light sources reflecting in her eye, which is a bit of a cheat code when you want to make someone look great. The more intricate that you can get with the number of shapes and different catch lights that you can get to show up in the eyes, it will likely end up making the person look that much more interesting and flattering. JD, who is sitting close to Dana, somehow didn't get the same quality of lighting. The whites of his eyes, they kind of appear dark, and you could faintly see a small point light source that's showing up in his eyes, but it's nowhere near as bright or as interesting or as good as the one that Dana has. At certain points of the interview, when JD has his chin up a little tiny bit more, you could see his eyes catching more of the light in the room, but he has dark shadows being thrown into his eye socket, which still leads to this kind of menacing, foreboding look. On a separate interview, Dana sat down with Vice President Harris and her running mate Tim Walz, and you could hopefully see the differences at this point with how they are both lit. We could see the whites of both candidates' eyes pretty well, with catch lights being easy to spot throughout the entirety of the interview. If you take a still frame from each interview and you compare them, putting aside your specific thoughts on their policies or who these people are, you might be able to see what the lighting is saying in this environment. The takeaway for me as a photographer is twofold. For one, if I'm ever on camera, I want to make sure that there are bright, prominent catch lights that are showing up in both of my eyes. Sort of like what I have right now in this video. The second takeaway is to always be aware of the catch lights that you can visually see when you're shooting stills or video. If you have the ability to control the lighting like I do here, where I could just add extra lights, then you'll want to make sure that everything is in the right position, that it's set to the right output, so that you can basically make the scene and make the person look their very best. If you're outdoors, just be aware of the things around you that might be reflecting back in your subject's eyes, and actually use it to your advantage to either make them look their best if that's what you're actually going for, or if you want to make the person look brooding and evil and menacing, all you got to do is just minimize or remove the catch lights in that person's eyes. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. Did you see the same thing that I was seeing, where the candidates and the interviewers and the moderators were all lit differently? Do you see how lighting can change the mood and the vibe that a person is trying to project? If not, I want you to develop your eye, and I want you to learn some hacks that I personally use to make people look their very best on camera. Check out the video that you see on screen, and I'll see you there.